I know we talked right before the meeting.
Maybe the applicant could answer them for the applicants here.
Yeah, I would say at this point, the tower committee would have been an advisory committee for
Right.
the town board, and this is before the town board as the approving board.
Right.
So it would be up to the board to ask questions. You can go through it step by step if you'd like, or you can address the issues that you've reviewed and that stand out to you, or however the board would like to proceed. But I do believe the applicant is here.
Okay.
To answer
You want to
questions.
introduce yourself, stand up and introduce yourself, and, because there obviously are some questions, I think you're aware of the questions that they've asked. What's your name, sir?
My name is Jeff Skolnick. I work with Network Building Consulting. We're the authorized agent for T-Mobile.
Okay, welcome.
Should we make a motion that we suspend the tower committee from looking at this?
I don't think tonight would be the appropriate time to do that. We would have
You
to
mean-
do
Just for this.
For this project? It wouldn't hurt to do that. I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
I don't know if that's the wording.
You could make a motion if you wanted to accept what the commission has given you, which is just a pass-through to the town board, and they essentially ask the town board to review it in their authority.
Okay. You want to make that
Yeah, I
motion?
make that motion.
Second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
And just looking there, if anybody can hop in, under the town attorney checklist, review the lease or deed, which no lease was provided. I understand you're still in negotiations on the lease?
We're 95% there. We had to wait for the hospital board to pass a resolution to approve it. That was done Thursday night, last Thursday. So we're just waiting for that, and then both parties will execute the lease.
Okay. And then, I guess,
So, last year when we did the same thing for the Niagara University, we provided the lease before the building permit was issued.
right, that's what we talked about doing,
Yep.
whatever approvals,
Right.
but we got you here. So number 4 would be basically the same thing, sale, lease, or sublease of telecommunications facilities, is nothing provided. Would that be separate, or would that be the same lease?
That would fall into the same
Okay.
scenario. I think that would be in the same
Um,
leasing scenario.
The removal of the tower, there was no bond provided, no agreement letter provided, another situation that,
Again, last year with Niagara University, because this is a rooftop, just like that one was, in the lease itself, there was a clause that when the lease terminates, T-Mobile agrees with the hospital to remove everything and restore it to what it was before. So because of that clause in the lease that both parties signed, and because this is not a tower per se, a lot of the code that was written, we discussed last year was for new towers. That was waived, the bond was waived.
now, do you agree with that assessment?
To a large extent, much of the code is written in contemplation of a brand new tower, say on a undeveloped piece of land.
Okay,
So the removal bond in that scenario would be a more important thing to consider. In this scenario, it's going directly on top of the hospital. So to a large extent, yes, once we have a chance to review that lease, and assuming that there would be provisions in there for the removal of it, that would accomplish the exact same goal that a removal bond for the town would.
okay. That takes care of the attorney checklist. Now, the building inspector checklist. Tim, you want to kind of address anything that you had a question about?
Yeah, so some of my comments mirrored what the town engineer comments and town attorney comments are, which were some stamped engineer submissions, which Bob has in his checklist, and then also the lease and the bond. So if all those things get satisfied with Bob, satisfied with Tom, I don't have any issue with it.
Okay. And then we move to, that was building inspector, now we move to the town engineer checklist.
Yeah, much of the same comments, Mr. Supervisor. A couple of these, I think, are just formalities that are just, have been done, but just haven't been submitted. Propagation plots and studies shall be certified by a licensed professional engineer. Radio emissions data shall be certified by a professional engineer. I think that it's been done, we just have to see the stamp on it. Number 12 would be the visual impact analysis shall be certified by an engineer or landscape architect registered in New York State. And then the last one, again, is the bond amount. So those were, again, somewhat formalities, but just straight for the code.
Okay. Planning board had no issues, the environmental commission had no issues. They provided a letter stating such. The town assessor had the exact same concern, question about the copy of the lease, and the highway department had no issues. So with that being said, how do we want to make this motion? Basically with attorney approval, and the necessary paperwork, we can approve the tower application?
Has a secret determination been made yet on this?
Yes.
Has-
Well, not by the board, but by the environmental commission.
Okay, so that's what you would do
So
first.
the
then.
board needs to do that.
You'd address secret first.
Okay.
Move to declare this negative deck for seeker.
Second.
Motion and a second, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then second?
And then I guess if you're gonna do a motion to approve it, it would be conditioned upon, and then put in the things that you think still need to be done.
I'll make a motion to approve the antenna application to T-Mobile Northeast LLC, subject to the submission of a signed lease with appropriate bond language, and subject to attorney approval and the submission of all other required documentation.
I thought we didn't need a bond.
No, it's got to be addressed in the lease. Addressed in the lease.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to say, is that the lease agreement together, contract language that would incorporate the bond.
Motion, you need a second?
Second. I got a question.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Question?
Question now, if we're, the signatures for town attorney and for engineer are left blank, when do you sign them once everything is in? This contract, everybody else signed it, Tim Master signed it, environmental signed it, planning signed it, but the town attorney signature is missing and engineer's signature is missing. Is that something?
So to answer your question, Mr. Morial, actually, there's a bit of a disconnect between the town code and how this process goes through the town. And there's nothing in the town code that requires the attorney to sign off on this, or the engineer to sign off on this. It's a process that's been developed, as I can tell, over the course of years to have it proceed through the various levels of the town. But it's not a requirement in the code that we sign off as an approver.
I think it was meant to be an approval, I think it was just intended to say which attorney reviewed it, and the checklist as well.
And I'll tell you that I was the one that created what's in front of you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And I want a motion to direct the supervisor to sign said agreement after it has been approved by you, or before it's approved, after.
That would, yeah, after.
So move to direct the supervisor to sign said agreement after attorney approval.
Is there any
I don't know what agreement is.
Well,
There's the,
Document, whatever, no agreement?
It's between the hospital and the
Hospital.
provider, so
Oh,
the town.
So there's nothing from.
yeah, we're not a party to it.
Yeah,
That's good.
okay,
I like that.
good, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Fresh language?
Recreation hires.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve seasonal applicants for employment within the Parks and Recreation as, I'm not gonna read it as, we're gonna put it into the minutes.
There's one addition, you have that also.
Yes, and also the addition of Gregory Sludowski, part-time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm gonna abstain. Riverfront Park update.
The sampling and testing has been completed. We just received the analytical results, and they're currently under review as we speak. More to follow on that, but nothing further than that for tonight.
Okay. Privilege of the floor, public.
Are we doing the first language tonight or not?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. So, you you want to address this, Tom?
Sure,
I'm sorry.
Supervisor. There was a letter that came in recently from the developers of the French Landing subdivision, essentially asking for an extension of 1 year on the time frame for them to complete their sidewalks. We just got that the other day, and I threw together just an extension agreement for the board to review. If you're interested in acting on it tonight, you're certainly welcome to, or you can consider it. But what I've set forward before you is essentially a language that mirrors the previous agreement, and it just changes the time frame from about approximately 1 year and a year and a month approximately from October of 2019 that the sidewalks were all supposed to be completed to November of 2020. That's the agreement that's in front of you, but I can't speak to anything other than the legal language of that agreement.
Okay. I spoke with Mr. Masters and Mr. Lannon. The houses are selling. There's only, 3 lots left in front of the sidewalks. Mr. Masters, Mr. Lannon had no issue with extending. The only problem is they're asking for November of 2020, which all of a sudden the ground's gonna be frozen and there's gonna be issues. So I'll make the motion to extend it to July 1st of 2020. That gives me plenty of time to put the sidewalks in, and hopefully they'll be able to sell their last 3 lots on that side of the road and have it done by July 1st of 2020. So that would be the motion I would say. Any more questions on it? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Is that good? Tom?
Yeah, that would work. So I guess I would ask, just to be clear, that you guys make a motion to adjust the contract, the extension that I have in front of you, to reflect the date that the board just agreed upon,
Okay.
and for Supervisor Broderick to sign that, and then I'll send it back to the developer for their signature if they're in agreement. If not, then
Obviously, the
what their
bond would be
response is.
extended to.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
Yeah, July 1st, 2020.
In this case, Mr. Morial, I don't believe it's a bond. I believe that there's just money in escrow.
Yeah.
Make a motion to amend the agreement or authorize the supervisor to sign an amended agreement amending the November 15th, 2020 date to July 1st, 2020.
Very good.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Is there one other motion that you want?
No, that works.
I do not have the privilege of the floor, public concern sheet. Rob, is it behind you? Anybody sign it? Okay. Rob Hoover.
As you already know, Rob Hoover, Fire Chief Sanborn. We were just wondering what the status, last April, coming through the board, there was about 70-some thousand was approved for updates to the park, and we were just wondering where that was sitting. I know one thing, like the playground equipment, that was put in, I believe, in '98. And so that's coming, there's some spots on that have been vandalized, damaged. Seems like every year when we do get some nice weather, you know, limited lighting out there, you know, it gets pretty dark and it just draws, I don't know, probably some kids and other people that trying to find something to do, and what they end up doing, they destroy everything. I think it would help if there was some lighting out there. LEDs are probably the best way to go. But just where everything is sitting. The company's been asking, and so that's why we're here. I know the seniors will be moving probably as soon as the sewer's connected to the farm museum. And so, or where do we go, or what's our next step, or?
I'm sure Mike Dash will kind of explain, we switched our grant writers. So there was a question on whether Greenway, if this is operation and maintenance, or if it's totally new. So I think Mrs. Minor was going to go through the Greenway, because it was originally approved, correct me if I'm wrong, under a Greenway project?
Yes.
Yeah. So if we could just run it through the Greenway again, that's how we were gonna fund it. And that obviously, Parks and Recreation, that would be my goal, is to fund it through Greenway. So I believe Mrs. Minor was looking into that, and what I can tell you is I can call her tomorrow and see what the status of that is, or kind of expedite it. You can call me anyways,
Okay.
so.
So does this sort of put us off, for
Not
things?
necessarily, I guess the question was whether we have to go back to the Greenway Commission, or just go to the host standing committee for funding. So, it's just a kind of a formality of how we gotta handle it, so.
Because that was one of the things too, that, you know, how rumors start that, well, the seniors are moving, so maybe they're gonna move the park over there too.
No,
So,
no,
Okay.
that was never,
okay, so we can put that to rest.
right. If you have any questions, feel free to call me.
Okay.
Was the lighting included in that original 7,000?
I don't believe it was.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
That
was?
that was
Okay.
lighting, mostly it was supposed to be for the basketball court and the ice rink. But I think if there was some lighting along the path, maybe something similar to what's going through town now, that maybe help, at night. I've chased a few kids out, and, I mean, they were like, not up to anything good, I guess, but, you know, I'm sure it would
Give
help.
us a little time on it.
Okay.
I'm encouraged though that it's had the lighting in there already. It's
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go into executive session, I would ask anybody else, privilege of the floor, if anybody else would like to speak. Yes, sir.
I'm happy to report I got a water bill this month.
I'm happy that you're reporting you got one. Oh, that's one other thing. You can pay your water bill online now. You go to our website, it's under GovPay. It is a simple pay it. I think there's a convenience fee of 2 or 3%. Right now, that's where we're at, but what we're working on is for a more elaborate, where you can actually check on your water bill online. But this is simply, you get your water bill, you can go online and pay it.
Good.
So, but it's not like you can go on it and say, gee, I don't think I got a water bill, what's my water bill, and look at it, but you can pay it online.
Okay, good.
So I get the next step in.
Yes, yes, and I am talking to the post office, and we upgraded our paper, and we lessened the perforation, and I'm sad to say that one person received their bill, which was their name and address on half the bill, rubber band around somebody else's other half of the bill, and one was, they lived on Town Line Road in the Sanborn, and the other half of the bill was Mayflower in Niagara Falls. So, not real happy with the United States Post Office, but that's where we sit there, so. Anybody else on the privilege of the floor? Okay, I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Can we do the upcoming meetings before you?
Okay, upcoming meetings, Environmental Commission, May 14th, 7 p.m. The Planning Board on May 16th was canceled. Historic Preservation, May 21st, 2019, 6 p.m. And the regular town board meeting, May 30th, 2019, at 6 p.m. That is a Thursday, due to the holiday. That is a Thursday.
What time's
Wait.
the Memorial Day parade?
Would you tell Mrs. Blazik it's on a Thursday when you do? No, you don't have to. There'll be no action taken, so I need a motion to go to executive session.
Parade, Memorial Day parade.
I don't know what time it is.
There is a Memorial Day parade and a memorial program at Kennedy Park.
Yes. I believe it's 11 or 12 o'clock. So,
Let the record show Jeanette did not leave early as she said she was going to.
yes, sir.
I may ask for a piece of action from the board. It would just be to approve the purchase of an appraisal on one of our cases of litigation.
Okay, so there may be action taken, there'll be an executive session. Make a motion to move to executive session for the purpose of a consultation with attorneys, ongoing litigation with various Article 7 tax assessment cases, and collective bargaining negotiations.
Mr. Geiger, Mr. Geiger.